30 Minutes with Ron. Hello, and welcome to another edition of 30 Minutes with Ron. I'm Ron, and we have some guests tonight. We have a guest over here. By the way, they are both chiefs of fire departments. This is Chief Jack Kastner from Cheshire. Did I pronounce your last name right? Because
Yes.
It could be an S or it could be a Z sound.
Z.
Kastner.
Right.
Okay. And this is Chief Ken Morgan from Meriden. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks
Are
for
you
having
ready?
us. We're ready.
We're ready. Okay. I like to ask questions that I think anybody would be interested in. And one of the ones that I think about when I think about firemen is that they're pretty brave people. And there must have been something in their lives that made them think that this was a good thing to do. And I thought I'd start with Ken and ask you, how did you decide to become a fireman?
They would describe it as a calling, but it started when I was young, probably 5 years of age. I don't know if I was just enthused by it or interested in it, as any typical kid would be, but it's something that I knew from the time I was 5 years old what I wanted to do and where I was going to go.
Wow. And so did you take courses? Like, I know there's not an elementary school or high school that you can take a course, but is there anything that you got into that helped you?
I think a couple of things that happened while I was doing some time in the Air Force. Had the opportunity to do some training with the fire department there and got involved in a community college level courses to become a firefighter. It's a basic firefighting program through the community college, and completing that pretty much sealed what I wanted to do and how I was going to get there.
Excellent. Good way to go. Jack, how about you?
Actually, my father was a volunteer in another town. I got out of high school and decided that I was going to take a year off. Decided I'd join the fire department, try and give something back to the community. Joined in 1987 and was a volunteer. I'm still a volunteer after hours, but volunteered. And then in the 2000s, the position opened up, and we went through the process. And I didn't enter the fire service thinking I would ever be having a career in it, to be quite honest with you. I was an electrician, I was in the insurance industry. Never really thought about having a career in it, but the position opened up, and I decided I was doing it for free. I wanted to at least give it a shot and go through the process, and did, and that was 10 years ago.
Okay.
And that's why I'm here today.
All right, excellent. What is the training process like to become a fireman? Because it would seem to me that it's not anything that's just a lighthearted exercise. There's some really intense things going on there. How about you, Ken?
Well, there's a couple of things that we do to train firefighters. It starts through a fire academy of sorts. There's a variety of ways you can do that. Some of the community colleges have their Firefighter 1 academies. There's several fire schools throughout the state that have fire academies, and the state holds one. There's different requirements to get into each of the academies. I know for the state academy, you have to be sponsored by a local fire department. I'm not sure about the regional academies, how they go about getting their recruits, but regardless, you have to go through some formal training. The larger departments will run their own recruit academies. They have the means, the money, and the ability to do that. A lot of the smaller departments don't have that capability.
Okay. Jack, how does it work in Cheshire?
Virtually the same. There's 9 regional fire schools across the state. Cheshire, demographically, we're the closest to the Wolcott Fire School. We're also a partner in the management of that. There's the Waterbury and the 9 contiguous towns around Waterbury participate in the operation and the oversight of that school. So that facility provides us entry-level firefighting, which takes place for volunteers 2 nights during the week, and then on a Saturday and or a Sunday. Certain weekends it's both days, but for the most part it's one day on the weekend, and that's what we use. But our firefighters or potential firefighters have the option of going to another regional fire school or the state or wherever, primarily based on their schedule, whatever works for them and fits with their job and their home lives and their mom and dad lives.
Yeah, you got to be considerate of those folks. Well, speaking of training, I bumped into a study guide. I was rummaging through some stuff at an antique shop, and this showed up, and I thought, wow, I never even thought that you would need a book to be a fireman, although that was kind of strange that I shouldn't have thought there was some kind of a guide. So I picked this up. Now, Jack, you said that Cheshire uses this, but it's an updated edition of this.
A newer version,
Yeah.
right? That's the first edition. I think they're on the 3rd or 4th,
Yeah.
or maybe even 5th edition. But yeah, that's a common book that's used across the country for entry-level firefighting training. In addition to that, that's kind of the main manual. There are a bunch of peripheral books that are specifically related to emergency medical services, hazardous materials, every facet of a firefighter's job. There's volumes of books and materials that's out there for us to use as resources.
Okay, and Ken, you said that the current volume is very voluminous, that it's even bigger than this one.
Yeah, it's quite a bit larger than that, and as Jack alluded to, that's just one of the many books that you'll need throughout your firefighting career. We start off with basic firefighting. If you want to become a pump operator or an apparatus operator, there's some more books for that. Aerial operations, more books for that. And as you work your way up through the company officer level and into chief officer, you're constantly studying, gaining knowledge on different subjects.
Huh. Now, when you mentioned those, it hadn't occurred to me that there's different positions within the fire department that you have to train for and learn about. So can you tell us about a few of those, Jack?
The way that the fire service training, there's an entry level, and I'll call that a basic entry level firefighting, which is standard firefighting principles and practices, as well as entry, and I'm going to coin the phrase of being an entry level or a minimum amount of knowledge that you're given in hazardous materials, in first aid, in forcible entry, vehicle extrication. You're a master of none, but you know a little about a lot. From there, once you get into the fire service, then it's really incumbent upon each individual firefighter what they want to pursue. If you want to pursue vehicle extrication or machinery extrication, you can go off onto that field. If you want to become a fire service instructor and teach other firefighters, you can go off into that field. So it's really modular, and the fire service is set up so you can, whatever you individually want to pursue, or your career path may lead you to be, that's what you really basically have to decide in your career, and that's how the fire service nationally has kind of set it up, so that you specialize in what it is that you're good at or what you want to pursue.
Okay. Now, Ken, I assume that there's certain people who can drive the trucks and certain people who aren't driving the trucks. Is there a procedure to get a license to be that person?
Yes. In this state, you have to have a Q endorsement, which is a special course that teaches you how to deal with larger apparatus. They're different kind of brakes than regular vehicles. They're different kinds of motors and different methods of operating them. And the course teaches you how to deal with those trucks specifically. In addition to that, there's specialized training when you advance from being a line firefighter into the driver position, and it differs from department to department based on what their needs are. But like in our department, we have the firefighters also do the driving. So at the point that they're just about finished with their probation, they start studying how to become a driver, and their company officers do a lot of that. During their first year and a half on the department, and at some point they transition over to our training division, and they do the formal training and certification for them to drive.
Okay. Let's talk about what your departments consist of. I'm assuming that there are firemen, and some of them are volunteers, and some of them are paid, and there must be secretarial staff. So, Jack, what's the Cheshire department like?
We have a group of around 60 volunteers. We have 5 full-time employees that work from 6:30 in the morning. We have somebody in the building till 4:30 in the afternoon, and we have. We're probably inverted as opposed, in comparison to Ken's department. We have a majority volunteers in Cheshire. We have 1 full-time secretarial employee, 3 fire marshals that are fire marshals, but they play a dual role. They're also drivers. They're firefighters. They're trained to firefighting. They do inspections. They do investigations, fire investigations. They do pretty much anything that we need to get done during the day. And then, because traditionally volunteer departments during the day have a hard time, and we're no exception to that, they fill a void for us that we just can't do with with our demographic. We're a bedroom community. Everybody, the majority of the people that live here don't work here, so our numbers of volunteers that are available to us during the day, from probably 5:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., that number shrinks significantly. So we rely heavily on the full-time fire marshal employees to get us through the tough spots.
And how many firehouses are there in Cheshire?
There's 3. one on South Main Street, one on Byham Road, and then Maple Avenue is fire headquarters.
Headquarters. And okay, so Ken, what's your department like?
Well, our department's kind of the flip side of what Jack's is. Our department's predominantly a career department. I have 102 people assigned to our department. 98 of those are in firefighting roles, and I have 3 people in support positions. We also have a smaller volunteer station in South Meriden, which, depending on how the volunteerism goes at that time, can have anywhere from 25 to 30 volunteers. And again, we have the same issues that any other volunteer department has. People work during the day, so staffing in the volunteer department during the day is sometimes erratic, and we accept that. That's part of having a volunteer department. So we supplement them with our career staff during the day. We actually do it all the time. At night, they have a live-in program where the volunteers actually come in and stay in the station at night. It makes their responses quite a bit quicker and eases the burden on the career guys from running down into South Meriden.
And how many fire stations are there in Meriden?
We have 6 total, 5 career, and then the 6th station is the South Meriden Volunteer Station.
Okay. Now, I'm aware that in Cheshire there used to be a fairly significant and somewhat helpful group of women's auxiliary. I don't know if that still exists. Is that still in existence?
It is still in existence. They assist at any major fire. They provide refreshments. They also do assist with clerical work and secretarial duties, or anything really that if we get overwhelmed with clerical work, the ladies will give us a hand and step in. Numbers are smaller now than it was probably 30 years ago, and that's simply because there's not a lot of moms that aren't working. You know, everybody's dual parent, dual working families, and when you get home from working 8 or 9 hours at your job, it's not as easy to get up and run out of the house to go to meetings and go to help somebody, you know, feed firefighters at a burning building. You know, it takes a special breed, but we're lucky that we still have some that are active.
Excellent. And I understand that there used to be, like, well, there is a Friends of the Library in Cheshire. Is there a Friends of the Fire Department group?
I don't know that it's official. I know there is a Facebook page to that. You know, I don't know. You know, if it's not an official group of sorts, but we've gotten tremendous support over the years from the community. They've come out for when we've had referendums. They're always supportive. We have open houses at our fire stations. We get nearly 1,000 people that come through the door. We keep our doors open. We're partners with the community, so I think that's kind of helped develop a rapport or relationship with the community, so that they trust us and they appreciate what the department provides.
Ken, how about in Meriden?
We don't have an auxiliary per se, but we do have a society of individuals, the Friends of the Fire Department, that got together, the Meriden Firefighter Benevolent Society, and their goal is to better the fire service in Meriden. Most of them are either related to firefighters or Friends of the Fire Service, but they get together and they support some of the activities we have had. Last year we did 5 open houses in the fire stations. They help support those. They provide refreshments and some of the benefits of graduating from our recruit orientation, or if a firefighter gets promoted to a company officer. We have a ceremony, and they provide a little bit of a family atmosphere for that.
Are there junior firemen? I know that there's like junior police department or cadet groups. Is that anything with the fire department like that?
We do. In Cheshire, we have a group that as soon as you reach the age of 16 and you're in high school, we have a junior program, and it's actually been one of our most successful programs. The attrition rate is very low, and we've had people that have come in at 16 and they're still there, and they're in their mid-30s to almost 40s. It's been in place a long time. We've had people come in at 16, graduate high school, go to college, go to law school, and then come back and they're still on our rolls today. So there's that's one benefit. We push it into high school, and we've found it to be a very, very fruitful program.
How about Meriden?
Meriden doesn't have a junior program through the fire department, but we do have, in cooperation with Hunter's Ambulance and the Health District, a youth CERT program that started this last summer. We have, I want to guess, right around 20 or so young youth that got involved in a mock disaster scenario, and they were trained on how to deal with providing first aid, setting up shelters, that type of services for the community. And they're a very good little group of individuals. They're very dedicated to what they do, and we expect that that program is going to take off and become an active part of the community.
Now, speaking of schools, when I was a kid, Smokey the Bear was a big deal. Is Smokey still in, or is Smokey kind of on the way out?
Well, it depends, I guess, on where you're at. If you live up in communities that have a lot of forestry areas, he's probably still pretty popular because that's where he came from. The Forest Service was kind of a program to help prevent some of the catastrophic forest fires that they have primarily in the central and west coast regions. But we don't see them a lot around here.
How about for Cheshire? Do we have anything is Smokey involved in Cheshire?
We do purchase some advertising material for Fire Prevention Week, which is in October. Some of that material still has Smokey on it. We still have the Smokey outfit that we will go out to schools once in a while, but more and more today, if you walked in with a Smokey the Bear outfit on, the kids don't know who you are.
Who's Smokey?
Yeah, if you had something a little bit more hip, the kids might get the message a little bit.
Now, speaking of Fire Prevention Week, that's in October, is it?
Correct. It's usually the second week of October. I can't remember the exact dates this year, but October is Fire Prevention Month, and we kick off a lot of activities, not only in our department, but throughout the school districts, trying to get the message out to the kids, providing them with the opportunity to see the fire trucks, talk with the firefighters, and basically give them a good fire safety message.
So you do have some outreach. Yes. How about in Cheshire?
We do the same thing in Cheshire. We try to hit every daycare, all the pre-K schools. We go visit. We send crews out. We do the Teach the Kids 911, stop, drop, and roll, and we do kind of the traditional things that we do. We reach out through the schools and we provide information out to the families and send it home through the kids through school. But it's October is always a busy month. We have stuff scheduled almost every day.
Now, I remember, and I actually still have a couple of these in my garage, which has a lot of stuff in my garage. Sorry, wife. Poor Diane. Anyway, we have red plastic fire hats, fire department hats, and they were given out by the fire department. Are they still being given out?
Yeah, we still buy them by the case.
For some reason, that's one of the most popular things that we can give out. I don't know if it's the fantasy of being part of the fire department or it's just that the kids love getting the plastic helmets. And yeah, we go through lots of them.
Well, that's good to hear. I like that. In the world of firefighting, when the calls come in, I would think that adrenaline starts to flow. And I assume that it flows from the earliest or lowest level firefighter, the new person, all the way up to the chief. But maybe that's not true. What happens in your situation, Ken?
I think that as you gain experience, you learn to control that. I know as a boot firefighter, you would get excited to go to calls, but you get so wrapped up, if you will, in your mission and what you're doing that you don't realize it till after. As a command officer, that's one of the things we have to learn to control. As we talked about earlier, when you're in command of an operation, that operation is dictated on how well you command it or how well you control it. And if we get out of control because we get excited or the adrenaline kicks in, it shows and it affects the entire operation.
Yeah, I guess that could be a problem. Anything that you wanted to add there, Jack?
No, I think you can pretty much summed everything up. I think firefighters need leadership. They need management. They need to know their leaders and their managers are solid in their mission and what they're doing, and they're focused. We're in a business where we don't get a lot of second chances when we make a decision. It's got to be the right one, and we have to be confident in what we've done. And as long as we stick with what our decisions are, or our tactics are, and we follow them through, and our people see us doing that and not losing control or questioning ourselves, that's what in my opinion, makes a fire officer a good fire officer.
Now, I know in Cheshire, at least at the headquarters, you have kind of like a mini museum of artifacts and photos. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The majority of that is either donated by our members, and as recently as 2 weeks ago, we had a family who had found an old model fire engine that's probably about 2.5 feet long, and they were cleaning out a relative's house, excuse me, and they said, geez, what should we do with this thing? We don't want to throw it out. And they said, well, let's bring it up to the firehouse. We'll donate it to the firehouse. So now we have it on display in our lobby, but we have a lot of our old communications equipment and old pictures, and the fire service, I think, in general, doesn't throw a lot of things away. You know, we're kind of collectors by nature, so as things age, you know, and we try to clean out and we try to throw things away, we'll come across something that's 30 or 40 years old, and we'll, you know, what was old now is once, you know, it's new again, and it's sitting on a shelf, and everybody looks at it and says, oh, geez, that's kind of neat. So we just generally tend to collect things. I know that for me personally as well as professionally, that's how it happens.
Okay, and how about in Meriden?
We do the same. We don't have a museum per se, but virtually every firehouse has a pictorial history of fires in the city or stuff that their specific company has been involved with. At Station 2 on Pratt Street, we do have a display case that's got some pretty interesting artifacts in it. Meriden at one point had a smaller tin badge for their firefighters, and we've got the stamp that was the wooden stamp that's was actually used to make that badge. That was pretty interesting for when I first got here and saw that. But virtually every station that we have has some level of history in it relating back to the early days of the fire department.
When were those early days of the fire department in Meriden?
Meriden's fire department's been around since about mid-1800s. Has developed quite a following as far as the historical part of it. We have companies that are very proud of their history. Like Station 1 started as a cataract hose company. It's one of the original companies in town. Truck 1 was the Ever-Ready Hook and Ladder Company. They're very proud of their history. The department has gone, like I said, gone from all volunteers to virtually a career department in the main part of the city. But we still keep a little hold on to that volunteerism in South Meriden.
And is there a historian or a semi-official historian for the department?
We have a couple individuals that kind of keep track of the history of the department. One of our assistant chiefs is pretty good about digging into the archives and looking at stuff, and he's got a pretty good history of it. Very similar to how Jack got his model truck. Every now and then we'll get somebody that will send us something, or will have a picture that relates to the history, and we put all that together in our binders. We've also had an individual that was very much in tune to Meriden, the city of Meriden, and the fire department, and kept an extensive history of news articles, historical events. There are volumes of them that he kept and put together on virtually every aspect of the Meriden Fire Department. Those volumes are still accessible. We can get to them. That's part of a private collection, and we're hoping maybe one day that they'll come over to our department and be part of our history.
Or maybe they'll get scanned and at least have them in 2 different places. How about in Cheshire, Jack?
We have a volunteer historian who does record keeping, but we rely a lot more on. We're a little bit younger than Meriden. We started in 1912. And we have a lot of the chiefs from the 60s and the 70s. I'll say 70s were still around. So we still actually rely a lot on history. If we have questions, we can ask them, and they still remember back into the 40s and 50s, because their fathers and fathers were firefighters in the department. So we still have some of the historic knowledge in the fire service or in the fire department from generations of people that are still there. That's kind of how it works.
And you recently celebrated your 100th in 2012.
Correct.
And there was a magazine put together by the Cheshire Herald with help from the chamber, and that was pretty impressive. Yeah,
it was kind of a snapshot of our history and what started the fire department, when and where and started, and who actually started it. It's definitely worth reading if you have copies. We have plenty of copies at fire headquarters if you want to stop by.
They're available.
Yeah.
Now, I know that it's possible for citizens in a community to help the fire department. One way is to keep their house from getting on fire. So there's a bunch of different regulations and ways to do that. Another way is to donate things. And like I know in Cheshire, they have these demonstrations, which I assume they have in Meriden as well. And one time we had a car from my mother-in-law that we didn't need anymore, was not in such great shape, and we donated it, and it was either used in a fire demonstration or Jaws of Life. So that's something that people can do. Is there anything else that people can do?
We do use the cars, and if you have a title, that's a key piece of information. If you have a title to the vehicle and you want to get it to us and we'll take it, we do training, whether it's vehicle fires, extrication, whatever the case might be. One of the other things that you can do to help us is, and especially now with winter with snow coming, is keep the hydrants shoveled in front and around your house and your neighbor's house. And if there's not numbers, there is a town ordinance that says you're supposed to have numbers, and if I'm correct, it's 3 or 3.5 inches. Excuse me, visible from the street. And a lot of times, I would say probably better than 50 or 60% of the calls we go on, there's no numbers, and we have a hard time. You know, we're kind of playing, playing the numbers game, going down the street, guessing that it's between this number and this number, so it's got to be here. And I think that's critical for people to understand that not only if you need us for a fire, but if you're having a medical condition or there's some type of a police emergency that you need the police for, any time that we can cut out finding you or getting to you can make the difference of life or death.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So having those numbers visible and the hydrants shoveled over the winter time is a huge help for emergency responders.
Anything additional to add, Ken?
I think probably one of the biggest things that would help us is that keep in mind that with the cold weather comes different heating elements, furnaces that have been turned on. They've probably been on for a while now, but all of these things have to be maintained properly. And the other thing is that we've had a couple of fires recently that were directly related to cooking incidents. If you're going to be cooking something on your stove, you need to pay attention to it. You can't walk away from it. And a couple of, or at least one of these instances, that's exactly what happened. Individual put something on, walked away from it, forgot about it, and subsequently they lost their home.
We had a rice cake fire in our little toaster thing, and it was not a pleasant idea. So watch out for those things. Now we're coming down to about 2 minutes left in the show, and I wanted to give you both an opportunity to do some recruiting for your fire department. So let's start with you, Ken.
For our fire department, one of the avenues that we use for recruiting is volunteerism through our volunteer section, the South Meriden Volunteer Fire Department. Because we are a career department, a municipal department, we have pretty specific testing parameters that we have to go through to hire individuals. But once they get on that list, one of the things that we do look at is, have they been involved in a fire department before?
That would be helpful.
So anybody, I would say anybody that's even remotely interested in becoming a firefighter, take the time to go check out your fire department, see if there's a way you can volunteer down there. Yeah. A lot of the experienced people that we both get from come from volunteer fire departments. And
how about Jack? Real quickly, now we got to wrap up soon.
Okay. Yeah, we rely heavily on volunteers, as I said, and our website is www.cheshirefd.org or cheshirefd.com.
Okay.
Go there. We have applications, and stop by any firehouse on a Monday night between 7 and 9.
All right. And I think yours will show up on the crawl at the end of the show. All right, well, thanks for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed. We hope you've learned. And thanks for being with us.